Four aces are set to start tonight in MLB DFS, and honestly, all of them are in good enough spots to consider them for from a DFS perspective. Jacob deGrom facing the Cubs, Garrett Cole facing the Blue Jays, Zach Wheeler against the Dodgers, and Clayton Kershaw against Zach Wheeler and the Phillies for tonight. Our job is to rank those pitchers, let you know who should sit highest on the list for DFS, and get you set for Wednesday night's slate. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Wednesday night's 8-game main slate with lock set for 7:07. 2 additional minutes to mess up your lineups for today. The only game that I would expect to be outdoors tonight that has a temperature higher than 83 degrees is in Atlanta for the Braves and the Red Sox. I would give that game a boost of hitters. Every other game looks pretty tame, temperature between 63 and the 70s. So that's the one that stands out from a hitting perspective where you may want to give it a little boost up, and we'll talk about that game in the stacking section for today. But the main emphasis for today is trying to identify the top ace pitchers. We'll talk about that in just 1 second, but also today on our Q&A stream that's on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages at 4 p.m. You can tune in there and fire away any questions you've got about tonight's main slate. Make sure to subscribe there. Also check out our US Open DFS preview via myself and Brandon Gadula. You can find that on the FanDuel YouTube page, but also on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcast. That tees off tomorrow, so plenty of time to still get your research in and get those lineups in for Torrey Pines. Hey, soccer fans, this season FanDuel and Captain Morgan are teaming up to give you a one-of-a-kind soccer contest. Introducing Captain Morgan Soccer Pick'em, a weekly fantasy contest that is entirely free to play. The contest is simple. All you have to do is make quick predictions for Saturday games this soccer season. You'll earn points for each correct pick and compete for a chance to win up to $3,000 in prizes every single week. Head over to FanDuel and enter the Captain Morgan Soccer Pick'em today. Must be 21 plus to participate. For more details, visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel Fantasy app. Eligibility restrictions apply, and don't forget to make your game day more delicious and sub in the captain. Pitching preview, it's a good one for this Wednesday main slate. Jacob deGrom, shocker, highest salary pitcher on FanDuel. He checks in at 12-2, followed by Garrett Cole at $11,000. Zach Wheeler is 10-8, Clayton Kershaw 10-2. Those are the four guys for today. All 10-2 or higher, and deGrom at the top at 12-2. We also have Aaron Savali at $9,000, and then Zach Greinke and Ian Anderson are the others at $8,000 or higher. So we got those four superstars, and deGrom, Cole, Kershaw, and Wheeler. And I want to at least touch on all four guys. Usually we do just two studs here in the top section. So going to change things up for today, go through all four of those pitchers and rank them and give you the reasons why. And the hope is that in giving you the reasons why, you can, decide, okay, I actually disagree. I want to put Kershaw higher. I want to put Wheeler higher, et cetera, et cetera. So I will give you my reasoning and rank them, and then hopefully you can make your own rankings based on the information enclosed. We will still go through a value play after that as well. But for me, even with the good options, even with the salary being high, it still starts with Jacob deGrom at the top. He dealt with some tendonitis during his last start, but he's played catch. He's had a bullpen session. They've been playing things safe with him. So if they are allowing him to pitch for today, I assume that means he is good to go. He went 80 pitches last time out. That was, all he needed to go 6 innings and get 10 strikeouts. But he hasn't exceeded 85 pitches since coming back. And you could deem that as being a concern. I think length is a concern for Jacob deGrom because maybe the tendonitis is still there. Maybe they're still cautious with him. There are legit reasons to be concerned here. But despite the fact he has not gone more than 85 pitches since coming back, he still has 3 straight starts of 6+ innings and 0 earned runs. He has a 46% strikeout rate across 4 starts since returning. He has still been filthy. He's had 10 strikeouts in 1 or 2 of those games, I believe. He's facing the Cubs at home. They'll strike out a bit. So I think there are legit reasons to have concern about deGrom. He is still my top guy despite that. However, I also understand if you want to go Clayton Kershaw number 1, because Kershaw is number 2 for me, and it is a $2,000 salary gap. So if you want to go Kershaw, I get it. I understand, and I am fine with that. He's facing Wheeler and the Phillies. The Phillies will strike out. They have a 27% strikeout rate against lefties. And Kershaw has been decent himself, too. Across 14 starts, he has a 3.07 skill interactive ERA with a 29% strikeout rate. He has good numbers in the non-strikeout departments like walk rate and batted ball suppression, so he's been a really good pitcher. Kershaw hasn't had the best ceiling. He has hit double-digit strikeouts just once the entire year. That's why, even with the salary gap and the concerns around pitch count, I do still prefer Jacob deGrom for tonight. That's the reason Kershaw is 2 and not 1, but Kershaw can be number 2, and I feel good about putting him there. So to me, it's deGrom 1, Kershaw 2, Zach Wheeler is 3, which means I am putting him above Garrett Cole, and I feel okay about that personally. Wheeler has a higher strikeout rate in his most relevant sample. For him, that is 35% strikeout rate. That's across 8 starts with more sinkers. Weirdly, his strikeout rate has been very good despite throwing more sinkers, so good for him. Cole is at 33% in 8 starts with more curveballs. And as we know, Cole has gotten a big spin rate decrease recently. Wheeler's was down his last time out as well, but not dramatically, and he pitched really well. Both these guys were in tough matchups, where Cole is facing the Blue Jays, Wheeler is facing the Dodgers, but the Dodgers are missing Max Muncy, Corey Seager, Cody Bellinger. They're not the full Dodgers right now, so he's facing the Dodgers in theory, but he's not facing the Dodgers. And the Jays, who Cole is facing, have most of the guys who've contributed to their good marks this year, and they're healthy. So that's why I put Wheeler over Cole. The matchup is why I put Kershaw over Wheeler. Also, Kershaw's at home, whereas Wheeler is on the road. So to me, all things, including salary considered, I go deGrom 1, Kershaw 2, Wheeler 3, and Cole 4. All 4 are in play. If I had to lop one off, I'd be okay if I didn't get to Cole for tonight, given the weird stuff going on with him. He's still been fine the 2 starts since then from a strikeout rate perspective, but, you know, there are other factors at play here, and a tough matchup as well. So to me, if I had to lap one off, it'd be Cole, but I think these are definitively the top 4 guys for tonight. If I had to pick a value play for today, it would be Ian Anderson. He's facing the Red Sox, so tough matchup, but he's a good pitcher. He has across 12 starts a 3.91 skill interactive ERA with a 25% strikeout rate. He's also a ground ball pitcher. He's allowing just a 25% fly ball rate, and that's big given the aforementioned weather situation for this game. High temperatures, good park for hitting. You need a good fly ball rate or a low fly ball rate, and Anderson does have that. The Red Sox are tough. They're a big power team, a 104 WRC plus against righties. They will strike out, though. They got a 25% strikeout rate versus righties. Their walk rate is low at 7%. That's good from a pitch count perspective for a pitcher. And it's possible that they give JD Martinez the day off with no DH. He did play last night, but that was against the lefty, whereas Anderson's a righty. Maybe they say, hey, get a breather for today. We'll know that before lock, so account for that within your matchup. If there's no Martinez, maybe it's like an okay matchup. I'm not viewing the Red Sox right now as being a good matchup, but it's not the worst one in the world, and Anderson is a pretty good pitcher. Anderson hasn't had any huge strikeout games yet. His max is 8, but he's at least working deep in games. He has 4 quality starts over his past 6 starts and 6 across his past 9 starts. The lack of pop games from a strikeout rate perspective is why I might not get here. I think that I'd rather stick with the 4 studs we talked about before and focus all my exposure to them, because I think that on tonight's slate, you look at deGrom, Kershaw, Wheeler, Cole, it is going to be a high-scoring slate of pitcher, and I don't want to make up ground there with my hitters. So if you're insistent on a value play, Anderson is the best option, but I personally might not use any of them and might just focus on those 4 main studs, because I don't want to be playing catch up with my hitters after the pitchers outscore my guy. So that's my perspective for tonight. I think I can find some low salaried hitters. So let's try to do that right now and allow you to get to Jacob deGrom at 12-2. And the stacks will be tailored towards the assumption you're paying up at pitcher for today. That means we probably can't stack Houston with him, and they are a high quality stack. We'll talk about them and things to watch. If you're using Kershaw, you could potentially get to Houston, but I think that that's kind of, even that, it might be a bit of a stretch. But Atlanta, I think better enables us to get to DeGrom. So let's talk about them here as potentially the top stack of the night. They're facing Garrett Richards, and I have not been super keen on targeting hitters facing Richards this year because he does limit fly balls. He has allowed a 29% fly ball rate this year. The other data, though, is good for stacking. He has a 20% strikeout rate with an 11% walk rate. That leads to a lot of base runners. The balls might not be in the air, but they are generally hard hit. He's a 52% hard hit rate allowed, which is the highest mark on the slate. The ground ball rate is a big reason why Richards is, getting a good ERA this year at 4.09, but he's also been lucky. So it's not like we should say, oh, that's why his ERA is low. There's been some luck in there. His expected ERA is 5.26 according to Baseball Savant. And that luck may run out tonight, especially in a good hitting environment. Despite the fact he faces a pitcher for today, it's still going to be a tough situation against Atlanta, who is a really good offense. I think Atlanta makes a lot of sense for a quality stacking option, and I do want to be high on them for today. Richards, from a platoon perspective, has pretty even splits overall against righties and lefties. But weirdly, the ground ball rate goes down to 42% against righties. Same-handed batters actually have a lower ground ball rate against him, 56% ground ball rate against lefties. So that plays well for the Braves. We have a lot of righties here. Obviously, Ronald Acuna Jr., but if we're talking about this from the DeGrom perspective, Austin Riley, a big guy to target as a result of that. Dansby Swanson is not bad. William Contreras, if he is the catcher for tonight, has really good batted ball data versus righties. He is $2,500. So all three of those guys are value plays. It may not be enough to get you to Acuna with DeGrom, but it can make getting to DeGrom easier overall. So I do think that the Braves grade out pretty well for me for tonight, given the weather and given the matchup with Garrett Richards. Cleveland has had some big issues with lefties this year. They've obviously gotten no hit by Carlos Rodon and Wade Miley. So obviously it's less than ideal to stack them against a lefty. But they're facing Keegan Aiken tonight, and I think they could be able to have success against him, and I'll rank them second for stacking as a result of that. Aiken has made 3 starts in the majors so far. He has a 17% strikeout rate with a 5.31 skill interactive ERA. That skill interactive ERA is the worst in the slate. The strikeout rate is second worst. Aiken really struggling there. It's a 3-start sample, but those are the numbers that stabilize most quickly. His walk rate is 10%. And the batted ball data is not ideal either, with a 43% fly ball rate and a 38% hard hit rate. Now, it's worth mentioning, the elephant in the room here is that one of those games was against Cleveland. He came back on June 4th, and he threw 5 shutout innings with just 3 hits allowed. So, obviously, in that game, Aiken got the better of Cleveland. And again, their struggles versus lefties continue. They did make decent contact against him, though. They had 6 of 14 balls in play, had an exit velocity of at least 95 miles per hour. That's 43%. Their fly ball rate was the exact same. Plus, they've now seen him recently and have a better book on what to expect from him from a pitching perspective. I'm willing to give them a swing here to see what happens. And it's possible Aiken is solid again, but hopefully that possibility keeps others from giving it a spin. So I think that Cleveland, for the third straight slate, a team I want to stack once again for today. Cleveland in general does get downgraded against lefty, but the exception for me is Cesar Hernandez. He has a 242 ISO against lefties this year, and that's over 107 plate appearances, so it's not a super small sample. It is a big deviation from where he was at last year, so it's possible that number does not stick, but ISO tends to stabilize more quickly than a lot of numbers. It's very high. It's over 107 plate appearances. So I think that I'm at least willing to give him a bump up here and see what happens. Also with Cleveland, I would make sure before you decide to check out their value plays, dig in to see how long they play in games. We can talk about this in the Q&A stream later on. Harold Ramirez, safe. He'll play the full game. He's $2,500. You can feel good about him. But, guys like Yu Chang and also Owen Miller, looking to make sure they're playing the entire game before you get super excited about them. We'll talk about that more in the Q&A stream later on today. Finally, for our third stack, still looking for some salary savers. The Twins got a salary boost for today, which is kind of annoying given they got shut out last night. Obviously, the salaries are out before then, but they're facing Justice Sheffield, and he's in a pretty decent funk right now. So I think we can get to the Twins here. And there is at least one minimum salary play on this team I do like. Sheffield upping his changeup usage over his past 6 starts. It's not really working out super well because he has a 5.13 skill interactive ERA with a 15% strikeout rate. The skill interactive ERA is second worst in the slate behind Aiken. The strikeout rate is worse than Aiken's. So that's good for stacking. He's letting up a 45% hard hit rate. He does get some ground balls. His fly ball rate allowed is just 30%, but that hasn't saved him. His ERA in this time is 5.58. He let up 5 runs to the Rangers, Padres, and Tigers, though 2 against the Tigers were unearned. But the Rangers are not good against lefties. Padres are not good against lefties. The Tigers, until recently, were not good against lefties. He is back at home. That could help Sheffield get back on track, and that's a big reason why the Twins are not above Cleveland and Atlanta. Park factor here not as good for them. But the Twins, pretty decent against lefties with a 112 WRC plus and a 199 ISO. That ISO is actually the highest mark on the slate. I think it makes sense to get behind them here, despite the fact they did get that salary boost and the park is not ideal. I think the Twins do still grade out pretty well. And one of those salary savers is a min-salary guy. In Ryan Jeffers, he hit 7th and 5th in 2 games against lefties in the past week. He's got good power. He's got a 203 ISO in the big leagues. It's 229 in AAA this year. His barrel rate is pretty healthy at 14%. Jeffers does strike out too much, but Sheffield not getting a lot of those right now. So if using Jeffers at $2,000 allows me to get to DeGrom, I'm going to do it. I think that there is enough there to make me feel good about things here. So I think that Ryan Jeffers is someone, if you really want to give yourself that extra flexibility, I would at least give him a sniff. Unfortunately, the rest of the Twins are decently high salaried, so you will need to use him to get there, but he does make it a little bit easier and someone I am okay with for today. Let's finish up here at things to watch. I mentioned before that I do like Houston, just kind of hard to get to them when I'm peddling DeGrom. They're facing Jordan Lyles. Lyles has done a better job of keeping the ball on the ground since he increased his curveball usage, but it's still just a 20% strikeout rate with a 10% walk rate. We can stack against that, especially with a good team like Houston. So if you've got the wiggle room to use Houston, I would say it's a fine idea to do so. Again, Kershaw and Houston can work for sure. So I would check that out for sure. But for me with DeGrom, tougher to get there to Houston, but I do like them. You can get to them. One team to consider stacking is the Mets, and I say consider purposely. I'm not saying you should stack them. It's a consideration. They're facing what might be a bullpen game for the Cubs. Robert Stock will start this game, who is just a super hard-throwing guy, previously a reliever, but has been getting kind of stretched out in AAA. He went 57, 52, and 66 pitches in his final 3 AAA outings, so he might be out there for a while. Even with the big fastball, I think they could potentially get to him. The reason I'm not higher here is that they will have to get to him because the Cubs bullpen is pretty good. A lot of good arms in that pen. So if Stock does well for his 3 or 4 innings, it's going to be a bad night for the Mets. So I would say they are definitely behind the others. At least we're touching on here because, Stock has been in AAA for a reason. So I think they're worth considering, but that's why they're not higher on my list. Finally, one team I'd probably put above the Mets for stacking tonight is the Yankees. They're facing Ross Stripling in Buffalo. Stripling getting more strikeouts recently, so he's pitching well, but he is still letting up a 46% hard hit rate and a 44% fly ball rate, and that can lead to blowups. Like if you're looking for a one-off with upside, check out the Yankees, and I would also consider stacking the Yankees here if you want an alternative. And they do have some value plays as well. So check out the Yankees. I think they're in play for tonight from a stacking perspective against Ross Stripling, given the batted ball data he is still allowing. That is all that we have for today. As mentioned, there is still some more stuff to cover later on today for the Q&A. So make sure you swing back here on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages, 4 p.m. Eastern, and get your questions in. Make sure you subscribe there, but also make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, no matter where you get your podcasts. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. Check out the US Open podcast already posted. If you have questions for me before 4 p.m., I am on Twitter at Jim Sonis. JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, their video producer, for setting up the video broadcast for today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.